A very good afternoon to all of you. I am Nancy Garg, your host for today's webinar. I welcome you all to this webinar session scheduled today. We have a very special guest with us today. I welcome our guest speaker, Advocate Akshay Bhambri sir. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and joining us today to enlighten the budding lawyers and young minds connected with us here. Let me introduce you all to the guest of the day. Mr. Akshay Bhambri specializes in matters pertaining to cyber law and cyber security, matrimony, property, RERA, A.D.R and indirect taxation such as customs, excise, service tax, etc. He has years of expertise in the domain of cyber law and in professional legal education. He has successfully organized many seminars and workshops, along with triumphantly published 6 research papers till now. Academically, he graduated in B.A Political Science Honours from Delhi University and then went to pursue LLB. He is also a rank holder in his LLM and in cyber law, and he also holds a diploma in arbitration, conciliation, and mediation, with many other certificates in philosophy, sociology, psychology, and space law, etc. He is currently enrolled with the Delhi Bar Council, the Delhi High Court Bar Association, and a bar member of Delhi District Courts, and is being assisted by 2 associate lawyers at present. He is the author of Cyber Law course for Katog LLP and is an editorial board member of Journal for Law Students and Researchers. Once again, I welcome you, sir. I request all our participants to please keep their video and mic off throughout the webinar. You can please put up your queries and questions in the chat box, which will be answered at the end of the question and answer round. Or you may raise your hand in the question and answer round, and then we'll be unmuting you thereafter, and you can ask your query directly from sir. So without wasting much time, let's start with this webinar now. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, I want to thank you, Vidhi Parivartan, for providing me such an opportunity to host this seminar and just share one of my experience on these banking frauds. And I want to start this seminar by one question, that are these banking frauds are increasing day by day? Are these banking frauds are virtual or real-time management? The answer is yes. So on that question, we are starting this seminar. And first of all, these banking frauds are the real-time transaction were happening, and the misunderstood the procedure by the IT Act, the cyber frauds, phishing, execution, all these are the part of these cyber frauds. And we'll discuss all these scenarios, procedures, details, filing, frauds in details today in this seminar. So the subject of the seminar, recovering money from online banking frauds, it's a very broad quotation. And if we says it covers the public entity banks, the private entity banks, and all the third party servers or the wallets that you use. So the procedure tends to be the same. The guidelines are provided by the RBI. So in a whole scenario, it will remain the same in a bubble box. And that is why we'll see all these transactions from banking frauds and how to get it back and how to complete all these procedures. So without wasting time, just let us head to the slide number 1. Can we switch to the slide number 1? You can see the highlights of this seminar is divided into the 10 pointers. We'll start this seminar by the online banking transaction, the types. Usually there are only 4 types where the online banking transactions held in this real-time world virtual location. And from there, we'll head to the types of online banking frauds. So all these online banking frauds will be only from these four online banking transactions. So in and all, four banking transactions and all the banking frauds are is a bubble conclusion of all these frauds. Pointer three, current scenarios of online frauds in India. What if you've been part of such fraud, your friends, your relative, what to approach and what are the guidelines that needs to be followed, which should be taken care in this pointer. The very first occasion, you should be aware how to file a complaint. The point number 4 is denoted to the same. Pointer 5, where to file a complaint. How to file and where to file is a similar embodiment. If you know where to file a complaint, you will write the complaint to the same adjudicating officer that you are addressing for this complaint. So pointer 4, I'll discuss all these in details. Point number 6, liability in the case of fraud transactions. Our IT Act have already prescribed the liabilities of the victim, the liabilities of the bank, the liabilities of the third party wallets. So the liabilities are already been prescribed in the IT Act 2000. Pointer 7, what you should do. What are the directions? What are the guidelines you have to follow? What is the procedure? This seminar is totally about the awareness. If you are aware about the rights, the liabilities, the RNLs, then it would be very easier for you to approach the banking ombudsman. Pointer 8, how to avoid online banking frauds in India. I'm going to share some tips and tricks, some hacking portfolios, how to prevent these frauds from your banking account. 9 and 10 pointers will discuss about do's and don'ts. So this is the highlight of this webinar. You can see they're divided into 10 pointers. Let us switch to the slide number 3. The slide number 3 discuss about the current scenarios of online frauds in India. I intentionally put that a map here. If you can see in 2019, the mark of these transaction was here. 20, a jump up to here, 21 is here. So if I want to conclude from this map that day by day these online transactions, these frauds are maximizing, it will not be a lie. If you look at the numbers, in 2019 it was about 1 lakh crore or something. In 20, it is just the double, nearly the double amount, 1.85 lakh crores. In 21, there's a 28% increase from 20 to 21. And if you look at the numbers, it will be about 47% from 2019 to 2021. 2 years, 50% maximization of these frauds. Now the question is why? The most important question, why these frauds are taking place. We'll discuss that in the further slides. So let us jump to the slide number 4. As I have discussed in the introduction part, there's only 4 transactions which revolves around the banking transactions. The number 1 is NEFT, National Electronic Fund Transfer. I'm sure everyone is aware of the same, these 4 transactions. RTGS, real-time gross settlement, ECS, electronic clearing system, and IMPS is immediate payment services. If you use the wallets, Paytm, PhonePe, GPay, Airtel Payment Bank, all the other third-party external wallets is being governed by the number 4 transaction, IMPS, immediate payment services, and that is why these third-party apps have a management system where these immediate payment system is being transacted. So we're not going to put in these RTGS categories. That is only be authorized by the RBI guidelines to the banks. All these third party wallets apps will be the part of the immediate payment service, IMPS. I'll just brief you up with differences all these transactions. NEFT is in pan India nationwide, the oldest transaction system involved by the bank. It's been launched and it's been a huge success in the initial years. Then they realized that NEFT was a part only for initially it was only the part for the banking opening hours till 4 or 5 p.m. Then it came to the amendment of the real RTGS, real cross time transactions, where the need the transaction money is taking place in a virtual in a bit data form, and that is why it was an immediate pause to banks for to immediate give you a platform for RTGS platform where you can give the transaction in 24 hours. And with these, I'll say the monetary policies where the demonetization happened and it gives a rise to the electronic clear system ECS, which works a very different way, but still the reversing withdrawal transaction from the banks it can be demanded by the user on these charts. The fourth term, which I started this slide with, the Paytm banks, PhonePe, MobiWink, Airtel banks, all these are a part of IMPS. Even these bank system provides you the same IMPM service. It's a real-time transaction happens within seconds. Just be sure that all these third party will be the categorized in the part of IMPS, which is a very important part already defined in the IT Act. Let us switch to the next slide and look for the details of all these transactions and the frauds. So types of online banking frauds. There are n numbers of frauds. We cannot count, and even the modification of these frauds, the new kinds of frauds, new kinds of scams are being built up every day. But the major frauds, 85% of these banking frauds are only the result of these five frauds. The very first is a stolen credit card and debit card, which takes up the major area of 20 to 23% of the online banking frauds in this banking frauds transaction. Cloning of debit and credit cards. The first one, stolen of credit card and debit card, and cloning of debit or credit card are inter intersimilar. I'll just give you one example. Whenever your card is being stolen, the information is stored in the bank database. The summary of all these databases, the footprints are already being intersected on your card number, validation months, CVVs, and your name. These four information gives you the right to transact your money from the bank to the any other holder that whatever you're paying for. The cloning of these stolen cards work only on these four criterias: credit card numbers, name, CVV, and the dates, expiry dates especially. So if your card is stolen, most probably there is a probability that these stolen cards will be cloned. Now the problem is, in order to clone these credit card and debit cards, there is a use of a multi-phase technological equipments that only if a syndicate is working on these banking transactions, that only happens in that scenario. An individual syndicate cannot work on these cloning part. So cloning part, if I put the proportion of 23% to the first fraud stolen, then I'll gonna give cloning a 4 or 5% of it. Not every stolen card's being cloned. Remember, not every stolen card be cloned. Now, the cloning is not being criticized only in this physical mode that whenever your card is stolen and it's been cloned and it can use in pan India or in the international water phase that you can do the transaction. Cloning is happening on a virtual phase. I'll just give you a brief scenario. If you're using a party wallets, if you're using a PayPal for the pan international transaction, these stolen cards used for all these transactions, especially in the PayPal. So the cloning, physical mode of cloning is only being 3 to 4%, but the virtual cloning is already being supposed in a database. So your all the stolen credit card, debit card information will be stored in a clone virtual database, which is a part of a dark web where you can access all these stolen card details. The third one is the phishing or fraudulent making customer give their own information. If this will cover about 50% of the frauds, that there is numerous ways that the people can approach you, strangers can approach you, or these cyber techies can approach you, so that you can give hand over all these important information. The four scenarios where the transaction can be a part of, they'll ask you for your name, your banking database, credit card information, CVs, and the dates. Remember, I told you the banking fraud detection will work only in the four outputs, which is already been mentioned in embedded on your card. So if a person cannot have the access to your card, they will approach you to get the information of the same. And the numerous ways they will give you a call. I'm from so and so bank and I'm the executive of so and so bank. So there's an upgrade program, there's a reward program, your bank card is expiring, or there's a pre-giveaway program, gift program, or the annual database has been changing. So please give us your information. So they'll approach you in a very smooth and a polite way. And the human tendency that if anyone approach you with a softer terms and a lighter way, we'll gonna trust them. That is the part of our human tendency, and that is why the people give their share their information. One of the very famous series has been Jamtara. It's been made on the real true events on available on Netflix. You can see how these information, how these people approach you, and you've been part of these fraudulent systems. So one pro tip: never share your banking information, no matter what. If your bank account falls, your bank become bankrupt, never share your information. Okay, no card numbers, no names, CVCs, and dates. If you never share these details, you are saving yourself from the 50% of these frauds. So never share your information. The number third one, stolen pins or the banking passwords. Stolen pins and a banking password, there is a newer approach. You go to the ATM, you plug in your card, you fill the information, you get the cash out, and you take your card there. There's some reported scenarios that the ATM is also being used a device where they can store your pen, where they can store your information, and the people have been trying to hack these ATMs. So if you say the ATMs has been safe, yes, it is, but it can be manipulated. And there's a numerous ways your information can be leaked. If you lost your wallet, that's a very fine example. If you lost your wallet, all your information is being stolen. Your phones, if you're using a one if you're using all the apps in your one phone, it will correlate, conflict, counter relate, and end up sharing all the information with all the third party websites. So the amount of information you share on the electronic platform should be taken care of. Hacked accounts and mobile apps, that will quoted amount only 7 to 8% of these transactions. That only happens if you join a link, you read the emails, chats, you open up any of the fraudulent links, then you can only be a part of this hacking account and mobile apps. Otherwise, there is no other way that these accounts can be hacked. There's only two ways that your bank account can be hacked: by share via link in the messages, emails, or the numerous application, or by the banking own system, or third, your phone. or the any other way which you use your bank internet services. So there's only three ways that your account can be hacked or the information can be leaked. Stolen CVCs, OTP numbers, and this only amounts to 2 or 3%. Stolen CVCs is one of the rare scenarios, but OTP numbers can be manipulated. There's other third-party apps that can manipulate your OTPs and the OTP information if you don't have the access to your phone. In that case, it could be dangerous and you can be the victim of these online banking frauds. So the summary till now, what we have discussed, there are about four major transactions. And out of that four major transactions, these are the fraud that can be concluded in a wider scenario of these banking frauds. Let us switch to the next slide. Now here, part two begins. That was the general information, how these banking frauds happens and what are the kinds of banking frauds. Now the part two says the awareness. What if you've been part or been a victim of these fraudulent transactions? Whom to approach, how to write a complaint, where to file a complaint. These are the three major discussion that we'll discuss today in these part two scenario of the online banking frauds. Number one, the very first step, if you've been a part of, if you've been a victim of it, or unfortunately you have shared your information, the very first simple step, approach your bank by any means. Go to the branch, call on a toll-free number and share your information that so and so person called me or from this number, but do not accept that I've shared the information. Just say that I believe in a doubtful situation there is a fraud on my account or there are the chances of being fraud. Give us any scenario, but do not say or acknowledge that you have shared your information voluntarily. Because if you share, there is a separate part. The liability of the banks is provided very limited on that scenario. But if you say that there can be a measures that bank can take, that bank have to take these mandatory measures in order to prevent you from these banking transactions. The very first step, approach the bank. Go to the branch or call on the toll-free number. Block your cards, freeze your account. If it's a saving account, call the bank and freeze your saving account. Delink all your credit cards, debit card, third-party wallets, switch transactions. Switch transaction is a part if all these wallets, cards, it's a banking term which is being part of connected that they can use to authorize the transaction. So freeze your account, freeze all the switch transactions from your same account. If it is a current account have n numbers of liabilities and n number of features. So it will be very easier for you to freeze the current account. In that case, if you have a very liable account, let's say Jandan Yojana account or any of the free provided account to you for any of the purposes, then what you can do, you can freeze your account only in that case. For that matter, the bank have certain duties that they can follow. CCTV cameras is in ATM outlets is been a mandatory. Whenever there is a ATM, there have to be a CCTV camera and it should be in a working condition. In any part, let's say if just an instance, if you've been part of a victim of ATM fraud, you have complained the bank and the bank under the investigation found that the CCTV was not working. In that case, bank is liable. Why? Because it was their duty and they have not bounded by their duty. That is why the reason the bank will be liable. So CCTV cameras in all the ATM, working CCTV camera, I'll say, is a mandatory cause. And the leading system, if you make a complaint in the bank always follow up within 48 hours. They'll send you a SMS, or you will get all the updates in the email, or if you have a banking app, you will all get the notification from your banking app. What is the scenario? What is the status of your complaint that you have made? The IT Act particularly talks about Section 46, reasonable security measures which banks have to take after a complaint is being launched. 43A, it's the reasonable security measure is the subheading, and in that case, a compensation is being provided by the bank if it has been proved that it was their liability, or it's not been your liability. So the BOP, the BOP will be that you have to only prove that it was not your voluntary information source. So if you say that it was not a part of your voluntary information source, then uh, it is on the bank to investigate on these unauthorized and illegal transactions. Okay, so if we are referring an IT Act, section number 40, section 46 and 43A, if there's a student who are interested to know about more sections, I'll say in the IT Act, there are two chapters which are most important. Chapter number 9, which are the penalties and the compensation, which discuss in details, and the chapter 11, which says offenses. So chapter 9 and chapter 11 are the most important chapters in the whole IT Act. And if you talk about the particular sections of the liability, 46 and the 43A is mentioned here in the slide. We can also take part of 45, section number 45, section 60, and section 64. I'll just brief you up. Section 60 is the appellate tribunal limitation. What is the part of the limitation? In what period you have complained? And if the period of the banks is being prescribed, so it talks about the limitation. 64 is the recovery of penalties and confrontation. What is the procedure? What amount can be recovered? Is the later one? Who is the liability? And how this amount of compensation can be decided? The most important section is one of the most important section, 46 and 45. 45 also is interlinked to the 46. It talks about the residuary powers of in such compensations where the bank have to give the information, and what if the bank fails. So there's a part of the residuary part that deals in section 45. So uh, that was the summary of the IT Act. Chapter 9, chapter 11, if you are interested in the IT Act, do read these two chapters. Can you switch to the next slide? So till now we have discussed the scenario, transactions, types. And if for related net banking, what these slides, when you raise a complaint, always file a written complaint. Let's say if I said approach a bank, what is the first step? Go to the branch, give your written complaint. Or if you are approaching from a toll-free number, tell them to register your complaint and share the ticket number. In that case, it says that you have filed a written complaint. Bank statement, do check. Tip number 2 of this seminar, do check your bank statement every 6 months. Look at the every transaction of every month, and if you found any transaction which uh, leads to be mysterious or doubtful, do contact the bank on such transactions. Always check your text messages, the banking text messages. You are getting the text message for a transaction, you are getting the message for a debit of the transaction, or any other particular use. Whenever you use banking services, you will get a text message. Lodge a complaint to the nearest police station if you've been part of this victim. And I will say the first step is to approach a bank. The second step is to register a complaint. Okay, and also the tip number three, do not install or do not be a part of these fancy apps that share your information. So this was a scenario how you can prevent from these banking frauds. Let us switch to the next slide. Where to file a complaint? Now, as a part of the awareness program, first to file a complaint in a bank in a written form or a toll-free number, take the ticket number. That is the first way. Second, go to the nearest police station, give your written complaint and say that you've been the victim of this cyber banking fraud. Please register your complaint. Now there's two scenarios opens up. If you give your complaint to a police station, the nearest police station will say, please approach the cyber cell. That is the very first scenario. Or the second scenario, they're gonna register your complaint. If they're gonna register your complaint, they're gonna forward the same complaint to the cyber cell. Every police station has a cyber cell. That is the second situation. If they register your complaint, they'll forward the same complaint to their own cyber cell. In the first case, which is the most common, they don't register your complaint. In that case, you can approach the court. The same procedure of CRPC 156(3), you can file and approach the court to file an FIR under the provided jurisdiction of your police station. Do remember, cyber cell, the police can directly transfer your complaint to the cyber cell. No need to approach the cyber cell indirectly. So this was the summary where to file a complaint. Let us switch to the next slide. Now the physical modes of complaint is being covered. I'll mention the virtual modes. In Delhi, this is the website where you can register your complaint. The Noida, the UP department have the another website, Indore, Visakhapatnam and Mumbai. Two ways you can approach if you want to file a virtual complaint. The very first way, go to this. Every state government have a website where you can lodge your complaint in case of a cyber frauds. Go to the website, register your complaint. It's a kind of a form, fill out your name, scenario, date, time, the bank, and the amount, disputed amount, which is being the fraudulent amount being transacted from your bank account. The very first way, approach the website of the state government for specially link provided to for your cyber fraud. Second way, write an email. It's the same written complaint can be used. If you file a written complaint in a police station for FIR, use the same content and send an email to your bank, send an email to these website authorities, to the adjudicating officers, or you can give on a call on the toll-free numbers. Remember, these are 3-4 steps you have to follow if you have been part or a victimized of these cyber frauds. 3 steps: website, FIR, approach the bank with a written complaint, or go for a toll-free number. If you are residents of these Delhi, Noida, Indore, Visakhapatnam, and Mumbai, you can note down these websites. Let us switch to the next slide. Liability. Now we came on the third part of our seminar. We have discussed the introduction in the part 1. We have discussed where to complain and how to complain. In the part 3, we'll discuss about the liabilities in such transaction. The liability is being defined in IT Act. In the chapter 9, the liability certain section was defined. Chapter 10 discuss about the cyber appellate tribunal, how these liability can be concerns. The very first, the prime example of the liabilities, if you have been part of the victim of these transaction, 3 days. 3 days scenario, this is a thumb rule. If there is a fraudulent transaction, just inform the bank within 3 days, a thumb rule. If you inform the bank within 3 days, According to the Act, your liability will be minimum. Your liability will be minimum if you inform the bank within 3 days. Or let's say in case if you have missed, then the other liability 3 to 7 days within a week. The part two says 3 to 7 days. If you approach the bank after 3 days or within 7 days, your liability would be narrowed down but to a certain amount, which I'll discuss in the other slide. What is the certain amount if you take your complaint after 3 days? Do remember thumb rule. If you are being part of a victim in these transactions, just inform your bank or register an FIR under 3 days. If more than 3 days, let's say more than 7 days, the customer liability shall be defined by the bank approved policy. There is a RBI notification which has been updated recently. The bank approved policies, there are some safety measures. What if the customer informs after 7 days, what would be the liabilities? And mostly the PPI instrument, which is the prepaid payment instruments, PPI, MobiWing, Oxygen, Amazon Pay, Paytms, all these are the PPI. These are the third party instruments of the transactions. So even if there's a fraud on these PPI payment methods, then the same rule apply, inform your bank in 3 days. Let us switch to the next slide, which is the certain extension of what should you do. 3 days in order to inform, a 90 days period as per the RBI mandate policies that if you make a register your complaint in the bank or if you register an FIR within 90 days scenario period, your complaint should be dealt with by the banking authorities. If the complaint found under the limitation period of 3 days, then the credit policy, according to the RBI credit policy, the amount should be reversed as soon immediately when your complaint is been closed. Or in that case, take a bubble of 10 days. If your complaint is been approved, resoluted under 90 days, then within 10 working days, your amount will be reversed back to you in your same account, a disputed transaction. Now, mostly it is being used in a part of credit card or debit cards. So 90 days period to resolve your details by the bank, and after 10 days, the amount will be reversed. Next slide, please. As I said, I'm going to share some tips and tricks how to avoid these online banking frauds. The Reserve Bank mandate there are some policies, some of the pointers which is on your slide that bank have a banking system and a procedure to deal with the net banking complaints. There is a database of the bank which deals with all these databases of the fraudulent complaints of a bank. Like every police station have a cyber cell, the bank have a same fraudulent cell as well. I'll just name it a fraudulent cell because all they take care of all these fraudulent complaints in that scenario. The liability of the customer is limited under these sets of unauthorized transaction. If there's an unauthorized transaction, you follow the procedure, you inform the banks within 3 days, then under the resolution period of 90 days, your liability is very limited. The bank gives you the status report every 48 hours. What is the scenario? What is the status being taken? Or if they not every 48 hours, if they give you a time period that within 30 days, or we're going to inform you within 45 days, the bank can do the same, give you one short information that we will be resolving your issue within 1 week, within 30 days or 45 days. If there's an unauthorized transaction by the PPI or the third party, same rule applies, 90 days resolution period, and you have to inform in 3 days. That is what the banking guideline says. If the customer delays, then the period of 4 to 7, your liability which I said would be limited, it would only be up to 25,000, depending on the amount of your disputed amount of the transaction. But it cannot be up to 25,000 in such scenarios. So this is awareness is the key to protect you from these transactions. Let us switch to the next slide. The liability procedure of the bank mandates as defined in the chapter 9. The liability, if there's a liability of the bank in BSBD, which is the basic saving account deposit, which the saving account you open in a bank is a part of a BSBD. It's a basic saving account. That it was older information of 5,000, but now it's been linked to the 10,000. The liability reported in online bank fraud for all these prepaid transactions, PPIs, saving accounts, current accounts, cash credit, CCA accounts, gift cards, which the corporate segment use, is also covered. The gift card segment or the liabilities is also covered, but it is only up with the annual. If you have an annual man of 25 lakh rupees, then in that case it is 10,000 for the other and 5 lakhs for the maximum liability of 25. So there's a cap. If 5 lakhs, then the maximum cap is 25. 5 lakh disputed transaction, then the cap is 25, not beyond that. The customer liability, the victim liability is only up to the scenario 25,000 rupees. In case if the bank well held liable in these unauthorized transaction, the amount will be reversed back to you 90 plus 10 within 100 days. 90 is for the resolution period, 10 days maximum is provided to reverse back the amount from the bank, even if in the case of a third party transactions. The bank must resolve your case in a resolution period of 90 days. The cap with 25,000 in a place of a 5 lakh. And if it is a case of 25 lakh, the ratio depends on the disputed transaction, which has been taken from your savings, current, or the PPI prepaid transactions. This is what the cap has been defined by the RBI in their mandate. Let us switch to the next slide. Do's and don'ts. So in these two slides, I'll just gonna share my do's and don'ts, but I'll just give you a brief recap. We have discussed types of transaction. We have discussed the frauds that will lead from these transactions. What would be the first step? Complaint to the bank authorities, to the police station. First step. What is the procedure? 90 days resolution period. If you make a complaint in 3 days, your liability will be minimum, bare minimum. If you inform the bank after 3 days or within 7 days, there is a cap of 25,000 rupees on the transaction of 5 lakh rupees. The preventive tips, the RBI guidelines, and the bank liabilities we have already discussed. So we are at the end of our seminars where I'm sharing the do's and don'ts. The do's and don'ts: secure your password. Your password should be more than 8 digits, include alphanumericals, special keys, add the initial of the password and add the later one. Just give you a fine example what a weak password looks like, what a strong password looks like. A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4 to the counting. Just a counting, just a number is a weak password. Just an alphabet password is a weak password. The creation of alphabet and a numeric password is a medium password, not strong, not weak. But if you use numbers, alphabets, and special keys, your password isn't strong enough. In the database, if there's a hacker, he'll gonna approach to your password, they're gonna use a database, there's gonna use an AI technology. An AI technology works on two sequence. Whether they're gonna look for the alphabets or whether they look for the numbers. So if you have a password of only of alphabets, only of numbers, 99% chances that your password can be break. like through AI programs. But if you have a mix of alphabets and numbers, still there are 33% chances that your password can be broken up. But if you have included special digits, then the AI in such scenario fails and cannot determine your common passwords, which is the practices by these hackers. Bank statement, check your bank statement every 6 months, look at the every month transaction. If you found any transaction, email, approach your bank and just say it's a part of a fraudulent transaction, please investigate on the same. Change your password, I'll say every, let's say 3 months, but 3 months would 90 days would be a very narrow period. So let's say change your password 4 to 5 months. Every 4 to 5 months, change your password. Make sure you don't use the same password as previous, or you are amending the same password. Let's say you have a password, let's say alpha, beta, gamma, and you do alpha 1 to 3, your new password. No. Beta 1 to 3, your new password. No. Make, if you change your password, make a completely new different password. Spot imposture, that means do not share your banking information in any case. Do not share your card numbers, do not share your address, name, CVVs. If you voluntarily do not share your information, you are secure 60% from these fraudulent transactions. You cannot be a part of these transactions if you voluntarily do not share all this information. If there's a report of card, your wallet is missing, or you don't remember your card is report, a new card can be issued you within 48 hours or 72 hours. If you think your card is missing and you will look your card within next 2 or 3 days, don't just report a loss. A loss card, if you report a loss card, there is no fees. The bank will provide you a exchange card free of cost. There is no fees in that. So never wait in case if your card is missing. Just report it and freeze your account in that case. These are the don'ts. Do follow these tips and tricks to prevent you from all these banking frauds. And what are the don'ts? In the next slide, avoid using your date of birth, contact number, your marriage anniversary, any important date, which is the second part of your life. Do not make a password. My number is 99xxxxxx. No, that's a weak password, very common password. Date of birth, no. Marriage anniversary, no. Any date which is a segment part of your life, never make a password of it. Do not use banking apps on public computers, or do not use a public Wi-Fi to access your banking apps in that case. Do not let your debit card, do not borrow your debit card to anyone. Do not click on any of the links. Very, these are the don'ts that are very common ones to share. So this was the end part of the seminar. We have discussed all from part two, liabilities, procedure, what is the mandates, RBI guidelines, do's and don't tips and tricks. So that. This is from my side on the part of the webinar title, how to prevent you from banking frauds. Thank you for joining and attending this session. Over to you, Nancy. If there's any question, I'll be here. You can ask any question and I'll be happy to answer all these questions.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a very wonderful session with you today. Now it's time for question and answer round. In case any participant has any kind of questions, please put up in the chat box. We'll be waiting for 1 to 2 minutes and then we'll be proceeding with the question and answer round. By the time the students can put their questions in the chat box. In case any of the participants have any kind of questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. So we have one question from Kshitij Arora. He is asking, "Sir, how secure are our funds in the event that the bank itself is hacked into?"
It's a very good question by Kshitij. Let's say even if the bank system has not been secured, but your liability has already been secured in the IT Act. Even if the amount, all of your amount is get wasted by the bank, and it's been proved that it was by the negligence of the bank, you still get all the amount by the bank. So in any case, even if the system is not safe, the liability is provided by the IT Act that is being secured in a legal way. So I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you, sir. We have another question from Professor Dr. Bindu Jindal. She is saying, "I have registered a complaint on 22/2/22 of chargeback of rupees 10,000 transaction from PNB Ambala, but till date it is not resolved. Should I approach to RBI?"
22nd of February 2022, 90 days 5. Okay. First of all, Binduji, you have to complain to your bank, give them a written complaint or call on the toll-free number. If they will register your complaint anyhow, which is a mandatory clause that they have to register a complaint. If in that case, even if you complain the banks, go file an FIR. If the FIR has not been registered, still leave an email to the nodal officer of PNB Bank. Within 90 days resolution period, a nodal officer will provide you, or within this same period, that starts from 22nd February 2022, 90 days resolution period by the bank. So please go and register an FIR and shoot an email to the nodal officer. If in that case, if the nodal officer is not, surely in any case they will provide you a reply. If you're not satisfied with the reply, approach to the banking's ombudsman. Approaching RBI will not gonna give you any mandates. So the last procedure, the last resort after the nodal officer is the banking ombudsman, or go for the Lok Adalat. A very safest route.
Thank you so much, sir. In case we have any other questions from the participants, please feel free to put them in the chat box. So, sir, I guess there are no more questions from our participants. In case there would be any kind of questions, you can please feel free to reach out Akshay sir on LinkedIn. He'll be happy to answer all your questions there. Thank you so much, sir. It was really a very interesting and informative session with you today. I thank all our participants also for being so patient, and we appreciate your time and patience, and we'll make sure that we'll keep serving you with such webinars in future also. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Vidhi. Honored to be a part of it. Have a
Thank you,
great
sir.
day.